I was not wrong about this offseason. I was very wrong about this offseason. I thought that there was almost zero chance that the Kansas City Chiefs would re-sign Trey Smith and or Nick Bolton, but here the Kansas City Chiefs are with both of them under contract for now. But we have some things to talk about, and I want to share three different sources and then get into some opinion here. In an article titled Chiefs Re-Sign Linebacker Nick Bolton to 3-Year Contract, subtitled On the Eve of Free Agency, Kansas City has signed its Mike linebacker to a 3-year deal worth $45 million from Arrowhead Pride by John Dixon, we get the following. I've been there for 7 years, he told Pete Sweeney after the Super Bowl. It feels like home. Welcomed me with open arms. As a little 18-year-old with short hair, no facial hair, let me go through growing pains and find out my own identity. And it reflects home. Now it will remain his home. We now estimate that the Chiefs are between $19.2 million and $21.2 million over the salary cap. Probably $21.2 million over. Now, the question here from this quote is, I've been there for 7 years. He's talking about the state of Missouri. Of course, he went to college at Mizzou. So it is worth noting that he is not a Kansas City Chief as much as he has adopted the state of Missouri as his home, as there is no other professional franchise any longer in the state of Missouri. That is a bit comforting. It does feel like Nick Bolton does love the area. In a tweet from Ian Rappaport, we get the following. The Chiefs are keeping star linebacker home. Sources say playmaker Nick Bolton and Kansas City are in agreement on a deal to keep him with the team that drafted him. He gets a 3-year, $45 million deal with $30 million, fully guaranteed. It's a deal done by Tommy Condon of CAA. As I understand it, it is a deal that is $15 million, $15 million, $15 million. Who would expect any type of funny business when you're talking about Nick Bolton? It is straightforward, and to the point. But there is one more source before I talk about some things that this signing, some questions and ideas that this signing raises. Chiefs re-sign Nick Bolton to 3-year, $45 million contract with $30 million guaranteed per report from MSN by Garrett Podell. By Garrett, the Kansas City Chiefs keep a key component of their 2024 fourth-ranked scoring defense, 19.2 points per game, allowed by re-signing inside linebacker Nick Bolton. He returns to the 3-time defending AFC champions on a 3-year, $45 million deal with $30 million guaranteed per NFL media. Bolton's $15 million average per year salary is now the 4th highest at his position, trailing only Roquan Smith, $20 million APY, Fred Warner, $19 million APY, and Tremaine Edmonds, $18 million APY. He has been the Chiefs' leading tackler in 3 of his 4 NFL seasons, including 2024 with 106. The one season he did not was, of course, that injury-abbreviated season. Here are the NFL linebackers averaging $10 million plus per year. This was Nick Bolton has not yet been added to this list. Roquan Smith averaging $20 a year, a $100 million contract. He is 28 years old, and he will hit free agency in 2028. These contracts for linebackers, there is hyperinflation in the NFL with quarterbacks and wide receivers right now. Corners are likely to join. We just saw... I'm going to blank on his name. The Panthers cornerback re-signed to a massive deal. So the money is going to inflate everywhere, but there will be hyperinflation at several places. One of the things that made me think that Nick Bolton would not be back is I did not know how the Kansas City Chiefs were going to allot a big contract to a middle linebacker. And we're going to get into some ideas here in this video about why Nick Bolton is a bit of a risk at that money. But 3 years from now, these numbers will kind of just be par for the course. Nick Bolton did not reset the linebacker market. He became the 4th highest paid linebacker in the NFL. I'm not 100% clear on the linebacker free agent class for this season, but I imagine that by the end of free agency, he'll probably be 5th, 6th, 7th. Someone else, at least one other person, I imagine will pass him up. You see here, there's even Jamion Sherwood averaging 15. So Nick Bolton is tied for 4th. Matt Milano, who has missed a lot of football and is 31 years old, averaging 14.1. Patrick Queen, 13.6. Joker, 12.5. So these numbers, the number that you're getting for Nick Bolton is kind of just a run-of-the-mill. The reason it looks like such a big number, really, is because Nick Bolton is coming off of his rookie contract. So that's kind of the big deal here, is that he's started since his rookie season, and he's coming off of his rookie deal. So the numbers are going to look large from that perspective. But when you look at the total value, I mean, he's right on par here with Jamion Sherwood, $15 million a year, $45 million total. So somebody's going to blow these numbers out of the water this off season. Again, I would love to be able to tell you who, but I didn't do any work on linebackers because I didn't think it was going to be something that we would see. Frankly, I thought that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to be just fine going into next season with Drew Tranquill, Leo Chenal, and then a third linebacker of their choosing, whether that be a free agent, whether that be someone in the draft. I thought that they would be all right under those circumstances. There seems to be, if I'm being 100% frank, for some reason, a disconnect between how I evaluate Leo Chenal, how it seems the fan base at large evaluates Leo Chenal, and how the coaching staff feels about Leo Chenal's capabilities on defense. That is the only real reason I can see re-signing Nick Bolton to well, it's not the only reason, and we'll get into a little bit more why, but the main reason that I could understand if they don't believe Leo Chenal is a 50 down per game starting middle linebacker, that's why you re-sign Nick Bolton. But here's the thing. So I have seen quite a bit more negativity on this than one might imagine for a guy who is the heart and soul of this defense when he's out there. I mean, you cannot deny that. Someone who has a penchant for making big plays the way that Nick Bolton does, and a guy who is a tackle machine. I've seen a lot more negativity for this move than I was probably expecting. Yes, he is limited athletically. Yes, we'll get into this a little bit later, was very bad in coverage last year. But he does stop the run. For as long as the Kansas City Chiefs were as bad against the run as they were, I would think that there would be a little bit more relief that a guy like Nick Bolton was wrapped up fairly long-term, medium-term. But let's talk a little bit about who Nick Bolton is. I think that this is especially worth looking at as we are coming out of the NFL Combine. 5'11" and 1/8 inches, so a hair under 6 foot, 237 pounds, though I believe he now plays around 245. 31 and 7/8 inch arms, 10 and 3/8 inch hands. Ran a 4.60 40-yard dash. That would have been middle of the pack at this year's Combine, probably maybe lower third, not right at middle of the pack. A 1.71 10-yard split, which is not the greatest number. 32-inch vertical, nothing to write home about there. 9-foot 7-inch broad jump, but 24 reps on the bench press. That bench press would have been third among linebackers at this year's Combine. There were 2 linebackers that did 26 reps. So Nick Bolton is a stout middle linebacker. He is a guy that is going to be solid against the run, a liability against the pass, and it's kind of funny because he's 100% or 0%. When he's on the field, he's always on the field. When he's injured, and we've seen it a couple times, he's gone, right? So not a whole lot of rotation, I guess is what I should say, for Nick Bolton. If he is there, he is there. Where's the green dot, right? So it's important that he is on the field if he is active. It's also worth remembering, by the way, that Nick Bolton is still young. Though he is coming off of a 4-year rookie deal, he is still 25 years old. He was drafted at 21. So 25 years old, entering his second contract. Middle linebackers, one of the positions in the NFL where being a crafty veteran certainly pays dividends. Not as much at outside linebacker, a lot more speed-based there, a lot more reaction-based there. But at middle linebacker, you can get away with being a crafty veteran. You can get away with grit and determination. You can get away with recognizing plays. And really, that's what he has done thus far in his career. So he'll be 28 when this deal is done. And I think at that point, you're looking at a guy who has been in the NFL for 7 years. Is he able to stay on the field by the end of his contract? It's 3 years in the future. It's not really worth speculating about now, but it is interesting to see that entering his second contract, he is just 25 years old. The main thought that I have here about this re-signing, we have to recognize, look, we've been spoiled a little bit, so sometimes I think that we don't really come to terms with this, but recognizing that the Chiefs have been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 seasons, have been to 7 consecutive AFC Championship games, on some level, if you're Brett Veach, entering an offseason, you want to stabilize the water as much as possible. Entering the offseason, you want to not create waves because what you've done has been successful. Were it not for not to bring this up, were it not for the offensive line, Patrick Mahomes might be heading into a season chasing his 6th ring. It's not because of the linebacking crew. It's not because of Nick Bolton. Were it not for deficiencies along the offensive line, Patrick Mahomes might be chasing ring number 6 this season. So yeah, if you think you're about to lose one of the contributors from your defense, it makes sense to try to re-sign him. If you think you're going to perhaps miss Nick Bolton, bring him back if at all possible. So I think that what's really being accomplished here is that I thought, I think many of us did, that the Chiefs were going to be going into this offseason with a whole lot of boxes that needed to be ticked. They were going to need to draft well. They were going to need to add quality free agents like Drew Tranquill that come at a bargain, these 1-year prove-it deal type guys. And with every Trey Smith and with every Nick Bolton that they re-sign, with every Hollywood Brown that they re-sign, all of a sudden that is not the case. With all of these uncertainties of the NFL draft, uncertainties of the NFL season, every known quantity is a positive. So now you've got your offensive guard wrapped up. I'm assuming you have a replacement for Joe Thuney. You have your middle linebacker retained. Now you need an offensive tackle, a running back, a wide receiver, a defensive tackle, and a corner. So I think you could argue safety, but I think that they have enough guys that have flashed capability at the safety position that Justin Reid will probably be missed, particularly early in the season. But I don't think that losing Justin Reid caves your defense. Every one of these boxes that have been ticked have left the remaining needs. The left tackle's a big one. But because you don't need a right guard, because you don't need a middle linebacker, because the wide receiver that you need is probably going to be wide receiver 4, because you have a starting running back and you can get running backs as UDFAs, because you have one defensive tackle and you've been experimenting with that second defensive tackle for years now, and because maybe Jalen Watson will be able to be that cornerback number 2 where he was last season, because all of those things are mitigating circumstance on this roster. It might be that with a first rounder, a second rounder, and 2 third rounders, you have the flexibility to trade up in the draft. That, in my opinion, is a very big part of what you're buying when you re-sign Nick Bolton. The ability to have liquidity in the draft. Now you can trade those assets around. You don't have to hope that a left tackle falls all the way down. You don't have to hope that one of the guys at the tail end of the first round is a guy on whom you've done your scouting and you believe can be a left tackle, but maybe. Now you can package your first and your second, you can throw in something later in the draft, and you can move up. You can, I won't say guarantee a left tackle because I don't think there are guarantees at left tackle, but you have the liquidity to be able to move up. Say you trade away your second rounder with your first rounder, all of a sudden you have one of these names at left tackle. Boom, you've got that covered. Now you have 2 third rounders, right? Can you get a wide receiver and a defensive tackle in that third round? If you can win the Super Bowl with not the greatest backup running back. You can win the Super Bowl with Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson at corner, Joshua Williams at third. You know you can do that. You've done it before. So if you can do that, if you can assure yourself the liquidity to move up and get a left tackle, now that you've got Trey Smith back, now that you've got Nick Bolton signed, now that you've got Hollywood Brown retained, at that point, left tackle is the big question mark. So now you can do whatever you have to on draft night to assure that you have some talent at that position. The Chiefs appear at this point, as stated earlier, to be $20 million over the salary cap. That has to be reconciled by 3 p.m. As of the recording of this video, they remain those $20 million, $21 million, a shade under $22 million over the salary cap. Apparently $39 million can be freed up just from the Patrick Mahomes restructuring. Whether or not they want to do that, I do not know. The last real thought that I have outside the box on the Nick Bolton signing is this. This is coming after the Ravens have re-signed Stanley, the left tackle. Is that what changed the projection for this roster? Is it possible that this came after Ronnie Stanley re-signing because Ronnie Stanley was the priority? Ronnie Stanley signing at $20 million a year. Nick Bolton at $15, right? So I think there is a world where it is possible that Ronnie Stanley had hit free agency. The Kansas City Chiefs had signed him, and then Nick Bolton leaves because you hope you can find a middle linebacker in the draft, or Leo Chanel plays middle linebacker. There's something inside of me that wants to see Leo Chanel on the field. Okay? I really want to see Leo Chanel on the field more often. But I think that is ultimately what ended up happening. And I have nothing to prove this. This is just me talking. But let's take a look at what it is that Nick Bolton has done. I know that these bottom numbers are going to be very difficult to see on your screen, but they're necessary to the point that I want to make. Entering the NFL, Nick Bolton was a revelation for this defense, topping 100 tackles in his rookie season. The Kansas City Chiefs were in dire need of linebacker help at that point. Ended up starting 12 games as a rookie, playing in 16. Had 1 fumble recovery, 3 pass deflections, 11 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. Felt like an absolute game changer at the time. His second year in the league, he ended up hitting 180 tackles. It was strong with Nick Bolton at that time. Ended up adding 2 sacks to his resume as well, though his tackles for loss fell to 9. Of course, the 2023 season was largely lost, playing and starting just 8 games. He had an interception, which was the third of his career. The guy, for being bad in coverage, is a turnover machine. 60 tackles that year. Last year was, in my opinion, disappointing for Nick Bolton. 106 tackles, the lowest of healthy seasons in his career. He played 16 games. 1 interception, 6 pass deflections, because teams were picking on him. So he had a lot more opportunities. If we can see here, well, I guess he didn't have more opportunities than his sophomore season. But the rating on, this is where I'm looking at right here. Rating when targeted. Rating of 103.6 when targeted last season. 374 yards when targeted last season. Gave up 39 completions on 49 targets. 39 completions, gave up 3 catches a game, basically, right? So Nick Bolton is not a coverage linebacker. Where this comes into play is the Kansas City Chiefs have to find ways to not rely on Nick Bolton in coverage. Plain and simple, straight up, flat out. Another issue that raised last season, it just felt like it was off all around for him last year. His missed tackle percentage was 3% his entire career. 3.4, 3.7, 3.2 last year. It was 10.9. Now, coming back from an injury, maybe it was just a bad year for Bolton. I don't want to think that this is the general trajectory for Nick Bolton, but if we're being honest with what we're looking at, he is a player that has definitive strengths. He is a solid and stout middle linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs defense, but he has definitive weaknesses as well, namely his abilities in coverage. So that is what I have on Nick Bolton being re-signed to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think I will be back later today with another video. It just depends on what happens going forward with free agency starting, etc. And if you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We're coming up on... We've passed 2 consecutive years of daily uploads, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.